Hello everyone, welcome to the summary of budget for the fiscal year 2021 to 22. Let us get into it without any further delay. Union budget 21 to 22. So what is budget? The budget at its simplest is the government's tentative income and expenditure statement. Through budget, the government explains or tells its intent for how it is going to earn income and how it is going to spend that earned money or the money that it has. So as I said earlier, to simply put, it's the government's tentative income and expenditure statement, nothing like a bank statement. So budget is particularly important because budget likely to affect the lives of citizens immediately and economic aggregates such as investment, output, employment and income distribution. This budget is particularly relevant and important and critical at the same time because of the pandemic that we have been going through since the past 1 year, and we will be seeing the effects of or aftershocks of the coronavirus pandemic in the near future also. So what are the specialities of this budget? This is the first ever digital union budget. It is a paperless budget. No paper was used. So she opened with the statement that India's fight against COVID-19 continues into 2021. See, this is a clear-cut statement or expression of intent of the government that we are not stopping our fight against COVID-19 here. The fight will continue into 2021 also. In quotes, you insert vaccination or inoculation drives, because yesterday's, as we have discussed earlier, we are seeing a flattening of curve and we are seeing a very low second wave number of cases, and we are aggressively implementing or aggressively pursuing inoculation or vaccination drives. If my information is correct, we have increased vaccination centers to about 183. Earlier they were less. Now we have added additional 183 vaccination centers to improve the vaccination percentage, out of which only 1.5% of adverse events were reported, which is very low compared to the number of people being vaccinated daily. Coming back to the budget, the dawn of a new era, one in which India is well poised to truly be the land of promise and hope. So the budget proposal for 2021 to 22 rests on 6 pillars. This budget is unique in sense that they have condensed the budget into 6 pillars, which are very important for our exam point of view. So what are the 6 pillars the union budget talks about? 1. Health and well-being. 2. Fiscal and financial capital along with infrastructure. 3. Inclusive development for aspirational India. 4. Reinvigorating human capital. 5. Innovation and research and development, R&D. 6. Minimum government and maximum governance. Repeat, minimum government and maximum governance. These are the core pillars which the union budget talks about, or the entire layout of the union budget rests upon these 6 pillars. Let us learn about what these pillars talk about individually. First, health and well-being. Due to coronavirus pandemic, a lot of focus has been put on the healthcare infrastructure of our country and how underprepared we were for such contingencies or such pandemics. For the past, since every budget has been presented, the constant criticism that any budget being presented receives is how little we are spending for healthcare or healthcare infrastructure, particularly in rural and semi-rural areas. So this budget in the first instance starts by addressing the deficit that healthcare sector in India has been facing for the past few decades. So there is a substantial increase in investment in healthcare infrastructure and the budget outlay for health and well-being. So they are bringing back the focus on healthcare and well-being, both in a single stroke. So focus is on strengthening 3 areas. One is preventive, curative and well-being. So in the outline itself, they are saying that the first line of defense regarding to protect our citizens is to be preventive in nature. We'll prevent anything that happens, or we'll try to prevent something that in terms of healthcare before it happens. Second is curative. Once somebody gets like let us say if a new virus strain comes out, we couldn't prevent it. Now comes the part of curative. We'll try to cure it. And finally, the overall well-being of the population or the nation itself. So coming to the numbers, compared to other years, the increase in investment or the percentage of money that is being allocated to healthcare has seen an increase of around 137%. Out of the 137% increase in the funding, 35,000 crore is being allocated for the vaccination of COVID-19. So vaccines get a major chunk of the money that is being allocated, because we are still in midst of a pandemic which doesn't have a end in sight or near future. The next aspect, health systems. A new scheme has been launched, PM Atmanirbhar Swasth Bharat Yojana. This is addition to National Health Mission. We have been in if you talk about the terminology, National Health Mission has been the flagship program for healthcare work in India. The central government's flagship program for healthcare and well-being in India is National Health Mission. All the other supporting programs come under the umbrella of National Health Mission. Now, the central government came out with a new system or scheme, that is PM Atmanirbhar Swasth Bharat Yojana. This is in addition to National Health Mission, and the hope here is that it will complement the National Health Mission, attaining the three ideals or the focus areas of our healthcare policy, that is preventive, curative and well-being. And the other aspect and the most important aspect that has been brought to the surface due to coronavirus pandemic is nutrition, lack of nutrition. We have Mission Poshan, where the Prime Minister in his Republic Day speech and his Independence Day speech at Red Fort in August 15 has spoken in length and in detail about how important nutrition is to kids and adults and the population of India, because we lack in nutrition. So in this budget, the government has extended the Mission Poshan to Mission Poshan 2.0. So here, merging the supplementary nutrition program and the Poshan Abhiyan as one. Earlier there were two different programs, where there was the supplementary nutrition program which was working in different areas or addressing different challenges, and the Poshan Abhiyan which was particularly tailored towards children and school-going kids, particularly government school-going kids who are underprivileged in every aspect of society. Now under Mission Poshan 2.0, they are merging the supplementary nutrition program and Poshan Abhiyan into one unit, and they'll be implementing policy or framing policy from that perspective. So there would be a very concentrated effort to address all the aspects of lack of nutrition in India. Again, the other important aspect is universal coverage of water supply. We do have a Jal Jeevan mission for rural area, but we never had a concrete program or scheme for urban area or to address the water supply need or water scarcity in urban areas. Now the central government is coming out and saying that we will be launching a Jal Jeevan mission or urban component of it. So these three, that is the healthcare system, the nutrition part of it, the water part of it, or the providing of drinking water or safe drinking water, are all part of Sustainable Development Goals. So in a way, the government is trying to address the lack of such facilities or such governmental schemes in India, all while addressing the Sustainable Development Goals targets also. Coming to the Swachh Bharat, the concept of Swasth Bharat has also been created to complement with Swachh Bharat, because Swachh Bharat, so we have two components now. One is Swachh Bharat, the other is Swasth Bharat. So now to move on to the next phase of Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, Urban Swachh Bharat Mission 2.0 is being launched. Along with that, a clean air policy and scrapping policy for vehicles is also being launched. So the clean air policy, they are allocating funds to come up with new technologies and to address pollution in 43 or 44 major cities in India, which have been uh, getting constrained or affected by heavy air pollution in those particular cities. Coming to the scrapping policy, this is going to be a voluntary scrapping policy of vehicles, and the government is going to set up automated testing centers where the vehicles will be tested automatically, and depending upon the age of the vehicles, 20 years for private vehicles and 15 years for commercial vehicles, where they have to go in those time periods and get tested for fitness and pollution and everything. So that is one area where the government is trying to re-implement or reinvent the concept of scrapping the vehicles which are old and unsafe and highly polluting in nature. Along with the scrapping policy, they hope that this will indirectly affect the clean air, affect air quality in the congested cities also. So coming to the second pillar, physical and financial capital and infrastructure. So production linked incentive scheme is one of the flagship programs of Indian government to address or to attract global investment and increase manufacturing capacity of India in a single attempt. So the chairman of Niti Aayog was speaking about the production linked incentive scheme at length during previous engagements with industry people in the last few months. So the government is trying to strengthen this production linked incentive scheme, where they have seen a good response to the PLI scheme. So PLI scheme is simply, in simple terms, is if an industry comes and starts production line or starts investment in direction of manufacturing anything in India, the government will automatically support the specific manufacturer or specific person who is trying to set up that production line or industry manufacturing unit there, through a form of subsidies or providing basic needed amenities, like certain factories need electricity, certain factories need road, certain factories need continuous water supply. So the government is trying to provide incentives to those manufacturing units through various schemes of the government in a single pipeline. So the hope here is that this is going to create and nurture manufacturing global champions for Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative. Again, the PLI scheme is directly linked to ANB scheme, Atmanirbhar Bharat, because we want to turn India into a global manufacturing powerhouse. So in tune with that, 1.9 close to 2 lakh crore is being allocated for the next 5 years, and they have divided the PLI scheme into 13 core sectors. So whenever you want to set up your manufacturing unit, and if that manufacturing unit is part of the 13 core sectors identified by the government, you will be automatically eligible to the PLI scheme, and you will be getting funds or incentives from the 1.97 lakh crore that has been allocated for the next 5 years. And again, in line with having a manufacturing building, in line with building the manufacturing capacity in India, textiles are an integral part for exporting our raw materials in a finished product. Generally what we are doing here is, we have two different challenges here. One is with cotton and one is with synthetic materials. Due to high demand, we end up every year importing almost 10 to 15% of our domestic need for cotton from foreign countries. We are importing, not exporting. And in some cases, in reverse, we are seeing where we are exporting synthetic materials, because most of our manufacturing units have been or are based on natural materials or cotton, that is cotton and silk. So the government is trying to reverse the role or implement the same, reduce the import bill in the textile industry. So they came out with mega investment textile parks Mitra scheme, that is in addition to the production linked incentive scheme. So this scheme is directly targeting the textile infrastructure or textile manufacturing powers of India. So the scheme is entirely tailored towards developing textile industries in India, either be it natural fibers or synthetic fibers or end products. We want to add value addition to textile industry in India. Whatever we are doing is not value added materials. We are either sending raw materials or either we are importing raw materials. Whatever that we end up exporting through our shores does not have the value addition that it deserves. So the government is trying to add value to the textile products that are being produced in India and increase value addition percentages through mega investment textile park scheme. So coming back to the infrastructure, one of the most important aspect or one of the most important component for igniting an downtrodden economy is infrastructure. Any economy that is seeing a slowdown, one of the best and sure ways to improve its trajectory or recovery is spending on infrastructure. So the current budget emphasizes or lays a very important emphasis on our infrastructure. So they come out with National Infrastructure Pipeline. NIP has been in implementation for the past few years. Until now, since NIP was launched, 6,835 projects were being funded through National Infrastructure Pipeline scheme. Now the 6,835 projects number has been increased to 7,400 projects, where the central government will pay for those projects to be completed in the near future. So it's a good thing that they are increasing the number of projects that come under the National Infrastructure Pipeline. And they are also talking about setting up a development financial institution. So what is development financial institution? So DFI in short is a professionally managed institution that acts as a provider, enabler and catalyst for infrastructure financing. So whenever we talk about investing or increasing our expenditure on infrastructure, we need to have certain agencies or institutions that look at all the projects or look at the structure that the money has to be spent. So that role here is being filled by Development Financial Institution. And along with National Infrastructure Pipeline, they have also come out with National Monetization Pipeline for potential brownfield infrastructure assets that will be launched. The government here is again indicating that not only building is important, getting back money or earning back money from what we have invested is also important. So to complement with the development or investment in infrastructure, they came out with the National Monetization Pipeline. In simple terms, whenever we use national highways, we pay tolls, right? So that is what the government is talking about here. But not only the roadways or national highways, other infrastructure aspect like ports, like some other infrastructure project, dams, such and all. So they are trying to monetize our infrastructure assets to increase their treasury or to add money to their treasury, and to along with the promise of infrastructure, roadways are also a key component for development. So the government said that we are going to lay 13,000 kilometer length of road. Particularly the example of Tamil Nadu comes because the government came out and said that we are going to lay a road network of around 3,500 kilometers length road in Tamil Nadu in the next 2 or 3 or 4 years at the least. So that is that addresses allocation of 13 trying to lay a network of road of length 13,000 kilometers addresses the national highway or road aspect of the infrastructure part. Now coming to the railways, this is the first time that they have allocated this is the first time that railways has received this much of money from budget, close to 1.1 lakh crore. This is the highest that railways has received in any of the budgets that were presented earlier. So the standout point in the budget allocation for railways is National Rail Plan for India 2030. So the plan is here is to create a future ready railway system by 2030. See, the re-emphasis here on the re-emphasis on railways here and the reasons that the government is spending so much money in railways is a simple concept for it addresses two things, right? So here, spending more money on railways or allocating more budget to railways will help railways in modernizing and providing access and services to the population of India. The second aspect here is public transport system. The government is coming out with a policy to address all aspects of public transport system. Whenever the population of a country uses its public transport system, automatically the emissions reduce, because let us go with a public transport system of a city. When everybody starts using buses, the number of cars and bikes on the road automatically goes down. So in this budget, two aspects, and again this addresses, as I said, it addresses two things. It develops public transport system of our country, especially railways and buses here, because other component of this funding is the government has came out with a special incentive or scheme for public bus transit system in India to complement with the railways. So when you talk about developing public and transport system, it kills two birds with one stone. That is, we are improving our network or transportation system, which will directly have two effects. One is it will increase its services and comforts to the population and increase its access to the population. As long as the population feels that they can have a safe, comfortable journey in the public transport system, they will automatically stop using their own vehicles, because they can trust the public transport system or public network for that matter. So this will address the trust issues or the lack of use of public transport by our citizens, and it will also reduce their dependency on their personal transportation systems, meaning cars and bikes, which will directly reduce the pollution numbers. So that is why the National Rail Plan for India 2030 is a key component in attaining the reduction in pollution and reduction in dependency on personal transportation, because public transportation or development of public transportation is a key factor in fighting climate change. Coming to the next aspect, financial capital. This is in the second pillar itself. Now the government came out and said that a single securities market code will be evolved. So what is the single security code will entail, meaning what are the earlier acts that were governing the SEBI and other investment sector. So earlier the acts were SEBI Act 1992, Depositories Act 1996, Security Contracts Regulation Act 1956, and Government Securities Act of 2007. The Finance Ministry is proposing to consolidate all the acts into a single securities market code. This will again improve the ease of doing business with India, because there is one code and that addresses all the issues. So the reason that is being done is to increase the permissible FDI limit, in a sense that whatever the limit for most of the sectors bearing few, the FDI limit has been set at 49%. Now the government is saying that we are going to increase the limit from 49 to 74% and allow foreign ownership and control with safeguards. Safeguards include having board members from India or majority of board members from India. That is one safeguard that they are talking about. But this is an interesting point to note, because what about the strategic sectors like defense, energy and other assets, national security assets? That has to be wait and see mode. So the important point here is we are going to increase FDI limit from 49% to 74%, but we have certain conditions that have to be fulfilled in order to allow foreign ownership and control with certain safeguards. So in order to address the NPA situation or the absconders situation where financial embezzlement or financial cheating has been done, the government came out and said that we are going to start an asset reconstruction company limited and asset management company to be set up disinvestment and strategic scale. So they are trying to address the non-performing asset situation or bankruptcy situations. The finance minister said a number of transactions, namely BPCL, Air India, Shipping Corporation of India, Container Corporation of India, IDBI Bank, BEML, Pawan Hans, Such and such others would be completed in the year 2021 to 2022. The government proposes to take the privatization of two public sector banks and one general insurance company in the in the fiscal year for 21 to 22. The general insurance company that they are talking about here is LIC. They are going to offer it in the public IPO, initial public offering for stock markets in India. We have to wait and see how this goes. Coming to the third pillar, that is inclusive development for aspirational India. One of the core pillars of inclusive development is agriculture. The government has extended the Samvita scheme to all states and unions. Earlier it was only limited to some states. Now the government said that we are going to implement Pan India, including all states and union territories. The scheme name is Samvita. Along with that, Operation Green Scheme is also be extended to 22 perishable products to boost value addition in agriculture and its allied products. So two things, one is Samvita scheme, the second is Operation Green Scheme. Coming to the next aspect of inclusive development, migrant workers and laborers. So the pandemic, one of the worst affected sections of our society are migrant laborers and workers. So the government said that we have already implemented the one nation one ration card scheme, through which beneficiary can claim their rations anywhere in the country. And they have also started a portal to collect information on unorganized sector and labor forces, meaning gig economy. They have started a portal to register gig economy workers who happen to be especially migrant workers, to help formulate schemes for them. Once you have enough data about what people are doing, what this gig economy entails, you can formulate a tailored formula to address the needs of gig economy workers. So also to address the underprivileged sections of society, to further facilitate credit flow under the scheme of Stand Up India for SCs and STs and women, the finance minister proposed to reduce the margin money requirement from 25 to 15%. By bringing this margin credit requirement or margin money requirement, the number of people eligible to get incentives from Stand Up India scheme goes tenfold or increases substantially, which is a good thing. Coming to the fourth pillar, reinvigorating human capital. Whenever we are talking about building manufacturing capacity of India, labor goes without saying. The need for labor goes without saying. So along with it, the government is also addressing educational requirements of our India. For the first time, government is proposed to set up a central university in Leh, UT of Leh, which has been always denied access to higher education because of it was part of Jammu and Kashmir, and most of the money that was being allocated to the state of Jammu and Kashmir, erstwhile Jammu and Kashmir, was being diverted to Jammu and Srinagar, and Leh was getting less and less money every year. So this is a promise that has been given long back, and a promise that has been kept in this budget. To complement with it, 100 new Sainik schools to be set up in partnership with NGOs, private schools and states. Currently there are 38 Sainik schools. This will take the number of Sainik schools to 138 by increasing with a factor of 3-4 numbers, 3 folds or 4 folds. So national educational policy comes into the play here to include or to strengthen the national educational policy. 15,000 schools will be qualitatively strengthened, and it is to be seen that all the components of the national education policy are being implemented in these 15,000 schools. Again, to address the shortages of schools and lack of educational facilities in tribal areas, 750 Eklavya model residential schools are being planned in tribal areas. And coming back to the labor aspect of human capital, proposed amendment to Apprenticeship Act to enhance opportunities, and also realignment of existing National Apprenticeship Training Scheme, NATS scheme. See, the NATM scheme is important because till now, whatever the scheme, whatever the funding that was being allocated to NATS scheme was pre-graduation, and less amount was being allocated to post graduation training or post graduation skill development. Now the government came out with a reverse policy where, though we are not abandoning the pre-graduation skill development schemes, but we are going to realign the scheme, and increased emphasis will be placed on post-graduation skill development. That is where the National Apprenticeship Training Scheme comes into play here. Coming to the fifth pillar, innovation and R&D. Innovation and R&D is what India lacks as of right now, because whatever the technologies that are being developed in India have a cloud hovering over them, questioning their technical know-how or quality. Let us go with the example of Covaxin. Since the Covaxin got its approval, a lot of questions has been asked over its efficacy, or its validity, or its developmental process. See, I'm not saying you cannot ask questions there, but whenever we say, or whenever we talk about something that is being developed in India, the first questions rise is it up to the snuff? Meaning the quality is always being questioned here, because we don't have a track record in research and development, proper track record in research and development. So that is why the budget, innovation and research and development gets a special mention, because research and development is a critical and key component in Atmanirbhar initiative. You cannot always depend on foreign technologies to improve your domestic manufacturing sector. You need to have your own machinery, you need to have your own ideas, you need to have your own products to develop your manufacturing capabilities. So along those lines, a national research foundation is to be set up. It will strengthen overall research ecosystem with focus on national priority thrust areas. It is the national priority thrust areas are important, because whatever the National Research Foundation is going to do, it is going to address the challenges of India, not other countries. The priority is to be Indian first, address Indian challenges first. Along with it, a National Language Translation Mission (NTLM) is going to be also be set up. This will enable the wealth of governance and policy related knowledge on the internet being made available in major Indian languages. That is National Language Translation Mission. Coming to the research aspect of it, or venturing out of our developmental language into a source of income, the new space India Limited NSIL is to be set up. A PSU, public sector undertaking under the Department of Space, will execute the PSLV CS-51 launch, which is carrying the Amazonia satellite from Brazil along with a few smaller Indian satellites. So we are trying to earn income from our advances in space technology. And the final and the most important that has been overlooked is allocation of 4,000 crores for over 5 years for deep ocean mission survey, exploration and conservation of deep sea biodiversity. So this has two components to it. One is deep ocean exploration or deep ocean mission survey and conservation of deep sea biodiversity. The government is trying to address or scan the oceans for natural resources along while studying the biodiversity of our ocean waters. Coming to the sixth and the final pillar, measures are minimum government and maximum governance. So measures are being undertaken to bring reforms in tribunals to ensure speedy justice. Along with it, National Commission for Allied Healthcare Professionals already introduced to ensure transparent and efficient regulation of the 56 allied healthcare professionals. So one of the, if you have been aware of how our economy is transforming itself, two sectors or two forms of professions come into discussion at the early stages. One is gig economy workers and second is care workers. Through earlier policies, we have discussed how the government is starting a portal to register gig economy workers to formulate new schemes, that is with the respect of gig economy workers. India undeniably is moving towards a gig economy based economic model or economic employment model. Gig economy employment model, meaning gig works. Uber, Ola, Zoom, Zomato, such gig works. The second aspect is care work. Care work is healthcare professionals or persons taking care of elderly or people in vulnerable stages. So the government has already set up a national commission for allied healthcare professionals to address their grievances or to formulate policy to benefit them. They said that they brought regulation for 56 allied healthcare professionals. Now they have started a national nursing and midwifery commissional bill. Will be introduced for the same in nursing profession. Now they are going to bring a law in itself, but they are going to introduce a bill in itself to address the needs of healthcare professionals. A proposed conciliation mechanism with mandate for quick resolution of contractual disputes with CPSCs. CPSCs is one area where the government is going for a strategic disinvestment. Along with it, 3,768 crores are being allotted for first digital census in the history of India. Censuses, if you have seen the yesterday's, they have postponed it to 2022. And the interesting aspect or the additional information regarding census in India is this is going to be a digital census, first time in history of India. So again, a 300 crore grant is being given to the government of Goa for the Diamond Jubilee celebrations of state, because the history of Goa is it has been liberated from Portuguese. So it is a Diamond Jubilee celebrations this year. Again, coming to the minimum government and maximum governance concept, 1,000 crores is being spent on welfare of tea workers, especially women and their children in Assam and West Bengal through a special scheme. So the last two, particularly the last one, giving 1,000 crore to West Bengal and Assam, is a political leaning part of the budget here. So coming back to the second component of budgeting, that is taxes. So the government says, or the budget says, that net borrowing for the states is allowed at 4% for 4% of GSDP for the year 21 to 22, as per the recommendations of 15th Finance Commission. So the 15th Finance Commission has an interesting aspect, because the 14th Finance Commission suggested few changes, but the 15th Finance Commission did not accept or did some reverses to the 14th Finance Commission's policies. So they said that the percentage or the borrowing percentage was around 42% was suggested by 14th Finance Commission, but the 15th came out and said that only 41% for state is enough, because no longer Jammu and Kashmir are a state, both are union territories now. So in that is why we have reduced the percentage from 42 to 41. So again, taxes, vision of a transparent, efficient tax system to promote investments and employment in the country country with minimum burden on taxpayers has been promised, and to a certain extent delivered also. So the government is also giving an exemption from filing taxes for returns for senior citizens over 75 years of age and having only pension and interest income. Tax to be deducted by paying bank directly. So that is one good step towards deregularizing tax regime in India. But as far as I am concerned, no major changes in tax regime or slabs has been brought. The tax slabs remains the same, and there are no major shifts in GST or indirect taxing policies also. Most of that structure seems to be intact, and nothing has been altered or changed as far as I am concerned. So in addition to increase the ease of tax filing and grievance redressal, National Faceless Income Tax Appellate Tribunal Center is also to be established to address the grievances of taxpayers. A tax holiday for affordable housing projects has been extended till March of 2022. And to develop our renewable energy sector, a duty on solar inverters has been raised from 5% to 20%, and on solar lanterns from 5% to 15%, as I said earlier, to encourage domestic productions. This will indirectly play into the Atmanirbhar initiative and the nationalistic tone of the budget, because we are talking about developing everything in India and reducing the dependency on foreign countries. So to complement with it nicely, They also said that a tax holiday for startups has been extended till March 31st of 2022. So, what was the promises here? What are the key areas that the government has been talking about since 2015 budget? First, they said that nation comes first, India. So, Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative. The second concept that they have been talking about is doubling farmers' income. The third, strong infrastructure, healthy India, good governance, opportunities for youth, educational for all, women empowerment, and inclusive development. So, to a certain extent, though there are certain deficiencies in the budget that has been presented, overall, the budget is a recovery budget, meaning the entire goal of the budget is short term in nature, that is to recovery from the economy slowdown due to coronavirus pandemic, all the while going for big reforms without changing much of it. So it is a very interesting budget and a very good budget at that when compared to the previous budget presented by the same respective finance minister. Thank you. Have a good day.